and welcome to Evansville Podcast. My name is Jason Burton. Thanks for listening. Before we get into today's topic, let's hear about our sponsor for today's show, 6th Street Soapery. Let's talk about soap for a minute. Chemical hardeners, foam enhancers, artificial fragrances, potential endocrine disruptors, neurotoxins, carcinogens. Wait, in soap? Isn't soap supposed to be good and clean and simple? It goes on your body and into the environment, so it should be. But should you do a lot of research and spend a lot of money on it? Nope. 6th Street Soapery has done the homework for you. They make simple, good, clean, and real soap and body products with all natural ingredients that are safe for the environment and great for your body. And bonus, they're made and sold locally, so they're good for Evansville. Find them at the corner of 6th Street and Washington Avenue, or have it sent to you from 6thstreetsoapery.com. 6th Street Soapery. Good, clean, fun. This week's local music spotlight is Art the Dude. The song is called Crazy Shaker Dance. Big thanks to Art for letting us play some of his music. You can check him out at artthedude.com. And now on to today's episode. We are talking with Erin Gibson about teaching journalism at USI, her recent TEDx speaking experience, and how to deal with fake news that's going around. So, great and important information in this one. Big thanks to Erin for all the info provided. Check out the show notes. There's some links to some the topics we talked about. Go to evansvillepodcast.com/Erin Gibson, and that will take you to the page with the information from this episode. Thanks. Technically not your first appearance on the podcast.
Technically not. No. And I'm hoping not the last.
Yeah.
My elephant documentary is going to be hopefully released next year. So I'll have a lot to talk about that too.
That would be great. Yeah.
Completely different topics. Actually,
hopefully.
The first one was, yeah. I don't know. Maybe, talking about zoos and circuses. I that's the same, right?
Yeah. Yes, it is. But yeah, the first appearance was the Evansville Speaks.
Yeah, I did. Talked about teaching.
Yeah.
And that was completely impromptu, right? When I didn't expect to speak that night.
Yeah.
Because the topic really at that moment, I just had been busy and the topic hadn't really inspired me that much, even though it sounded like Epiphany was a great topic.
Yeah.
But I just hadn't taken the time. But while I was sitting there listening every day, I was like, suddenly this.
Yeah, an epiphany.
I was like, yeah, I did. I literally did. And I wrote down on a napkin, I think, a bunch of notes.
Wow.
And was able to really, I was like, yeah, that's it. So
perfect. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about the news.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to talk to you for a while about this, even before you did your TEDx thing. Mm-hmm. But we can get there. So people that aren't familiar, you're an instructor at USI?
I am. I teach journalism in the Department of Communications, and I am the advisor to the student publications, which is The Shield, which is a weekly newspaper, and usishield.com.
Okay.
Been there since 2007.
All right.
Before that, my story really is all roads lead to, back again to USI.
Okay. Well, all right.
USI's been really influential in my life. I'm a grad, and I also, my first job out of college was as a result of internship at WIKY Radio, where I met my husband, John Gibson, who is now on WNIN. He was at WIKY for about 24 years. Wow. USI and journalism, those are huge themes in my life.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah. And getting your husband is in the news as well. So it's like, It's just all-consuming life thing. Kind of.
It is. Much of my career hasn't been in the news. I've done PR for Deaconess Hospital for a year, and then I ran South Central Radio Group's commercial radio department. I produced and wrote and produced commercials for about 7 years, and then went to grad school at SIU Carbondale, where I wanted to just be a student for once. That's what I gave myself for my 30th birthday, was going to grad school. I quit my job and went to grad school for my 30th birthday. And I'd hoped to just be able to go and be a student. And I got there, and they have a student television broadcast called River Region Evening Edition. Okay. And they broadcast live a student TV news program. Weather and everything. It's quite something, quite a production for undergrads.
Yeah.
And I got there, and there were needs when I got there, and they knew that they had somebody who had worked professionally and been in management. And so they kind of approached me with more opportunities. So I really mostly worked my way through grad school and did a little bit of studying too. So it wasn't all student work, but yes, being in our household is, NPR is on our radio all the time, and it always has been. That's just part of how we understand the world and how we keep up. We talk about news a lot and talk about current affairs, and not just globally or nationally. I mean, we're both very interested in local news, local government. So it's part of our lives, part of our fabric.
It's just not one of those things where it's like, the last thing I want to do right now is talk about the news.
Maybe since the election.
Yeah, okay.
we're both a little weary right now. Yeah. We are both trying to find ways of unplugging a little bit more. Right. maybe not turning the radio on, or maybe not watching the Sunday news talk shows as much as we were. We're having a little bit of exhaustion from that. Yeah, but we're still very up to date.
Right. One of the things, I guess that was one of my questions about the, like what you teach now, because things are different, right? Like just the last couple of years even.
Very much.
So it's pushed more towards digital, more like it's not just print, or, not even just word. You have to be on camera almost all the time and all this stuff too, right? So, I mean, how do you know what to teach?
I struggle with this every semester. I think about what has happened, and I try to figure out whether or not I need to incorporate a lot of this stuff into the assignments that I'm giving to students. But I always come back to, these are students who are, they're undergrads. Their high school experience probably didn't have a lot of exposure to how journalism works. And so I always go back to the basics. And what the feedback I hear from editors where my students intern, from professionals across the country that I have connections with through other college media advisors. It's called College Media Association, is an organization that I'm a member of. And we all talk about those basics of being able to determine what is news, what's newsworthy, how to write a solid story, how to report a solid story, how to interview, those basic communication skills. And then the other stuff to me comes with being a curious person and always being a lifelong learner. So I try to incorporate with my students tools, how to keep up. So what organizations to follow on Twitter, on Facebook, that will continue to introduce them to the tools of journalism that will make them then want to do those things. I mean, I was just reading a story this morning about how, I wish I could remember which newspaper did this. It was down in Florida. I think, I don't want to get it wrong. I think it was the Tampa Bay newspaper. And there was a big bridge story that some very local issue where they were going to close down a lane of this bridge and make it a toll only lane. And this newspaper decided to tell that story with Legos. And so I found myself into this local issue in Tampa, looking at this story unfold in front of me, and they built the bridge and they told the story and were showing what the problem was in between the Department of Transportation in Florida interpreting what 4 lanes it really means to them.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating. I can't teach that.
No.
I can't say we're going to now, this is Lego journalism.
Right.
What you can teach is, how can I best tell this story? What tools can I use that are at my disposal? And so in that case, they were using stop animation, where they were just building Legos, taking a photo, building Legos, taking a photo, and then it was animated and it was in motion, and these people and cars were all moving. That is something you can't teach. It's something that you, as a storyteller, just get inspired and decide, we're going to tell this differently. Yeah, there's going to be a print edition. There's going to be a print version of this story. That's going to be 500, 600, maybe 1,000 words, who knows, for this investigation that they did. Mm-hmm. But online, that's the way that story looked. And it played out one sentence at a time and one frame at a time, and it was engaging. And I promise you, people looked at that story that would not have looked at that story before. And that's what I hope to do, is inspire students to think like that. And so, and to foster an environment where they feel like they can.
Okay. So you mentioned some of your interns or so. You have former students, I'm assuming, that are around here that we might know.
I do.
Okay.
So one of my first students, I think a lot of people might recognize his name. One of my first students, he was actually the first editor-in-chief that I was there for the selection process. When I got to the Shield, there was an editor in place, and she was great, and we worked really well together. But the first full year, I got to be there for this selection process, and his name is John Webb, and he has a weekly column in the Courier. And he is now not just a former student; he's just a really great friend. He and his wife and children are. I'm just really happy to have a relationship with them. Zach Evans, who is the city reporter for the Courier. Shannon Hall, who covers Warwick County. So those are some local names. I've got some other people that are kind of working at the Courier that have been in my classes before too.
Yeah, cool. Well, it's nice to, almost like a proud parent, but
it's really strange to
weird.
be eating my Raisin Bran in the morning or and drinking my coffee and having the news delivered to me, reported to me by students that I had in my classroom or at the Shield. John never took a class from me. I'll go on record as saying that, and I tease him about that all the time. Yeah, he learned he didn't need one of my classes, and he dropped it. That was our first meeting. Wow, we've since gotten over it, both of us. Maybe. So, but yeah, it's really something, and I've seen. For one example, Shannon's been doing a lot of digital reporting or working with digital files and emails and things like that from the Warwick County over the trash issue and all of that. And watching her talk about public records and doing public records requests, I remember her being in my public affairs reporting class and us talking about public records and talking about the public access counselor and public access laws. And so to be on the other end of that now and see her, and then when I get together with her and she's telling me these stories, I can't help but flash back to being in front of a classroom with her and learning these things and watching the light come on. And that's pretty cool. Yeah.
You send them in like marked up copies and it's like, you should have right here, you should have talked about this instead.
I make a habit. I have never responded back in any other but positive ways to their writings.
That's probably for the best.
It probably is. I like to support the alum.
One thing, and I don't know how much you want to go into this part, but I learned about these computer generated news stories.
Robo-journalism.
Yeah, robo-journalism, which robots are going to take all our jobs, we know. But does that get approached ever in the class, or you ever talk about like, hey, this is a thing?
I usually in my basic reporting class, there's early on a lecture about the changing face of journalism or the changing landscape. Right. And this year was the first time I put in, on my list of here's the future, was the robots. And, they came, people might wonder how that works, but if you were following the Olympics, the Olympics were one place where they did this entered, and we were actually seeing some stories that were being generated by robots, and it would be those sporting events that maybe they don't have enough resources, they don't have people to cover every Olympic sport, and so someone would feed in the results to this computer, and they had templates and were able to plug in the results, and these stories would spit out. I don't prepare my students to be replaced by robots. It's not a real great recruitment tool for journalism.
No.
But just to know, the one thing I do prepare them for, though, is somebody always has to understand how news works.
Yep.
Somebody's going to have to program the computers.
Right.
And also, have quality control and be able to know this is wrong, or being able to correct and be able to fix those problems. So
yeah. No.
So yes, robots.
So robots. Yeah, I mean, the robot. And you mentioned that somebody has to program them until the robots learn how to do that. And that's on my side of the.
Yes.
When they take my job, then. But yeah, so just want to get a baseline for people to know, like, you know what you're talking about.
I hope people believe that.
Right.
I I believe my own propaganda, but
right. Well, that's part of it.
I got to convince
that's
you
part
to
of it,
believe
right?
it too, right?
Right.
So
this one weird trick to get you to click on this.
Yes. You won't believe what happened next.
Right. You won't believe where our conversation went next. I probably will use that on the title, maybe, just to see. But speaking of titles, whoa, wait, what?
Perfect transition, actually.
I know. See, I'm a pro here. So TEDx, how did you spoke at TEDx on a topic that I'd love to dig in a little bit on. And that's kind of why I invited you over.
I call this my soapbox issue.
Okay, good.
I can't really tell you exactly the day and time that this became my issue and where I started digging deep. TEDx, it really wasn't about doing TEDx. Yeah. It was about spreading the idea I had, which actually is what TEDx is about, right? Ideas worth spreading.
Yep.
So I didn't apply for TEDx Evansville last year. And at that time, I knew if I ever did, it would be this concept of, whoa, wait, what? And so when the invitations went out again, I was going to do it. And even though I have all these other open projects right now, I'm working on a documentary on elephants at Mesco Park Zoo, and I have all sorts of things going on at work. I decided that, I'm going to invest 3 or 4 months into this.
Sure.
And, here we're talking about a 10 to 15 minute speech, but it's an investment of time to try to get down this concept in that amount of time. So I applied, and the idea is what kept me going. Sometime in the last couple of years, it occurred to me that my passion for finding good information and sharing good information and teaching people how to identify good news versus bad news. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean happy versus sad. I mean quality, truth. I had gone to a news literacy leadership conference at Stony Brook University in 2013, where it really finally lit the fire. It was like, this is what my mission in life is.
Okay.
And gave me the tools to do it. So since then, I've been doing a lot of research, and one day it just hit me. My friends and I, when we would react to news, we had this joke where we would say, whoa, wait, what? And somebody would tell you something shocking.
Yeah.
And those things converged, and I realized that's exactly what I want people to do, the process I want them to take hold of when they're reading information or being exposed to information in their social media feeds. So the idea is there's actually punctuation involved. It's purposeful. The whoa has an exclamation point, the wait has a period, and the what has a question mark. And it's whoa is that first reaction you have to news or information, and it's the shocking, I can't believe that's happening. It makes you angry or excited or so just motivated that you want to share it with people. But the problem is, we know that not everything that you read on the internet is true. But it's so easy because everything looks the same. In your social media feed, it looks the same. There's a photo and there's a headline. And the way they get you to click on it is to get more outrageous.
Right.
And they use tricks to do that. Clickbait.
Yep.
So the wait is that pause. So the wait has a period at the end. It's that pause of, hold on a second. This is, I'm too upset about this. Is this possibly not true? Could this be baloney? And so that pause is just that second that you take before you hit share or retweet. And then the what, with the question mark, is the series of questions that you should ask that help you determine, is this good information? Is this reliable? Should I be sharing this with other people, or will I become part of the problem? So that's those series of questions all begin with the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, why, how, and that's what the TEDx talk is.
Okay. Yeah, and I saw it, and it's online now.
It is. I know that they've started rolling them out. Yeah, I don't know if mine's up yet. I know that
I'll link to it as soon as I know for
okay.
sure. So that way people can
I know
watch
that James McLeod and Joe Atkinson's was up at the time we recorded this, and they hadn't notified me mine was up yet. So
well, hopefully by the time this rolls out, we'll be good to go and not liars. But
it will be available.
It will be eventually.
Yes.
It will be available. So this concept of like fake news, I guess.
Yes, this came up. That's the new way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And we weren't talking about that before Donald Trump was elected. I mean, they weren't really talking about fake news until after the fact.
But it's been
a problem.
A problem for forever.
Yes.
I mean, that's why like Snopes, the website Snopes exists, and it's like since the beginning of the internet, this thing has had to exist to say no, that really didn't happen.
Right. And the fact-checking websites have existed forever too.
Yeah.
And it really has taken me aback in the last, how long has it been? 6 weeks since the election?
I guess
I don't know.
Yeah. Feels like longer.
I'm not really looking at the calendar much. Is Christmas coming?
That.
So, it's like the shock. I'm shocked. There's gambling going on in here. The whole Casablanca line that I love. It's this. Yeah, the internet's full of bad things, and that people have motivations for influencing in some way. They want your money. They want your support. They want your vote. They need you to sign this petition, whatever. And they're going to go. There are a lot of great people out there doing that. In the talk, I say they're either trying to inform you or they're trying to influence you. And what is their motivation? And so now, with the conversation of fake news, though, what has changed, I think, in the rhetoric around this is that idea of, are they trying to inform you? Suddenly, the people who really are trying to inform you, who their motivation, their code of ethics, their standards at their publications are to try to give you as objective of a version of the story as they can, as that they're capable of doing.
Yeah.
And that bothers me that they are being called into question as well, their motivations. I understand we can rail against corporate media, and there are plenty of problems to discuss about corporate media and what's happening. Part of it is our newsrooms are being decimated. We have fewer and fewer people working in them. And it's not robots taking over in those newsrooms either. They are on their own. It's just they're being told that they have to do more with less. And I think that's, no, that's not how that works.
I like the John Oliver segment, which you can find. I'll try to link to that too.
Yeah.
But there's that's the perfect example of just you're writing to clicks instead of just writing what you're like what is it? I think there was the link about popular versus important.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's like what you have to write from what's popular because that's what drives the money, right?
Yes. And when you had brought that up to me before the interview, the popular versus important, the first thing that popped into my head is probably the very first day of my class, I asked everyone, should news organizations give news consumers what they want or what they need? And to me, the answer is both. I don't think you can do, first of all, we can't claim to know everything that they want.
Right.
And what they need to know, they might not know they want to know it, but locally, the trash issue and the water issue, actually. So, our water bills are going up. Why is that happening? And if those of us who've been following the news and been covering the news in the city for the last 25, 30 years, know that it's an aging infrastructure and that there's this mandate that we have to update these and somebody's got to pay for it. And so if you don't have that understanding, and you still refuse to read the local newspaper to keep up, I just can't handle that. But nobody told me that. Well, there's a place for you to know where that comes from. And it's, I think we are responsible to be a good citizen. I think we have a responsibility to stay informed about what's going on in our own community and in our own country and our world. And, relying on, I don't know who they think was going to tell them that, but somebody has been telling them for a long time that this is coming down the pike.
Yeah, that's a overall problem, and I don't know if it's just this area, like Evansville area.
Probably not.
Probably not, but like no one seems to know what is going on ever.
Yes.
And complain about it.
Yeah,
and that's a little bit of a soapbox issue I have. It's like it's pretty easy to find out what's going on. Actually, I do it. It's a little bit of work though.
I remember back in, the number of times, a publication tries to have a really solid community calendar of all the things that are going on, and you never can keep up with it all.
Right.
And I go online and look and everybody's trying, but the thing is, I find things while I'm looking for that,
Right.
So I don't know if it's supposed to be. I mean, are we supposed to do carrier pigeon or what do people?
You have to go door to door and tell people, okay, hey, here's what's going on today.
Yeah.
Here's the news that you need to know about.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh wait, they do that with the newspaper, don't they?
And there's radios and televisions and
that's old media though.
And yes, and I don't mean to. And the thing is, I don't want to demean. I know. That's what I'm trying to do.
But I do the same problem. Yeah. I mean, to my shame, admitting it right now, which hopefully I'll rectify soon. But I don't subscribe to the newspaper, and for a while I was like, why would I do that? It's the Evansville newspaper. Who cares? But I mean, I'm realizing more and more as I dig into this issue, this fake news issue. It's like, we need to support them because they're actually. You need to pay the journalists because they will actually give you the right news. Which
goes back to the John Oliver. I mean, he really did nail that idea of what do we need to, pay them and
pay them.
Yes, they deserve that. I also understand, and this is what I spend a lot of time with my students talking about, is we need to tell the news in a way that we are reaching the people who are too busy living their lives and trying to just survive. Yep. And so I'm not trying to demean anyone who isn't staying informed, but I am trying to inspire them. Here's the tools. These are the tools. It's not as hard as you think. If you're on social media, you can stay up to date.
Yeah.
And that's where we go back to, wait, what?
But then,
you need to make sure you're on a healthy news diet. And so you need to be able to determine which sites are reliable, which sites are trying to get you to click. There's a difference between, an extremist right or leftist site trying to get you to click with clickbait and the Courier trying to get you to click to talk about, what's going on with my sewer rates.
Right. You wouldn't believe what happened to our sewer rates next.
Yes.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
I want to empower people. Right. Information, I know we say it all the time, information is power, but it is.
Yeah, and so is misinformation.
Yes, and then we get into the post-truth.
Truthiness whole thing.
Yeah. So Stephen Colbert invented truthiness
like a
long time ago.
Yeah.
And here we're talking post-truth. However, if you look back, if you search post-truth on the internet, you're going to find articles at almost every presidential election in the last 15, 20 years talking about this post-truth era. So this isn't a new concept. We might have reached a critical mass and this might be Maybe it did have an effect. I don't know. There's really no way to quantify that. No one's really going to answer that question.
Right.
But we can try to figure out, what do we know, and where can we go from here? How can we be educated from here? And we need to agree what truth is and what facts are, and we have to accept. And I've been doing a lot of soul searching about what have I dismissed, or what have I taken out of my, what have I kicked out of my bubble?
Oh, the bubble.
Yeah.
It's the problem.
Yeah. What have I hidden, or what am I not doing? And so I've started adding in some things that I would not have thought I would have. I want to know what other viewpoints are. And so I'm putting that back in my social media feed. And that's kind of where I would like to start. I'd like to inspire everybody to, whatever you think the other side is, go ahead and, add some of that back in.
Right.
You don't have to put up with the sites that are lying to you or trying to get you to click in. And,
right.
A lot of them, the headlines don't match what the story is saying. The headline will be really outrageous.
But who cares at that point? They've got their impression.
Anderson Cooper interviewed, I wish I remembered the guy's name. I actually kind of want to forget the guy's name, so this is good. Anderson Cooper just interviewed a guy who creates fake news.
Yeah.
And it was infuriating. He seemed so detached and so cynical about the world. He talked about somebody who was demeaning his readers. He was blaming them for not reading all the way to the end to realize that what he had just written was all made up or salacious, or took those facts and stretched them.
Yeah.
He called what he was doing satire, which is not true. Let's also define what satire is.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a take on the news, the take on what is real, with a twist that makes it funny.
Right, like the Onion.
Yes,
probably the prime example.
Andy
of that,
Borowitz.
Andy Borowitz, yeah.
There's all sorts of great examples of it out there, and that do great work. That is funny, but
the one that was local recently, that like Johnny Depp is in town and all that junk, it's not funny.
It's not funny. It's called Empire News is one of the sites that will do that. In fact, it's the first example I use in my TED Talk. It was years back in 2013, Empire News. Well, let's back up. That summer, they found a leg in the Ohio River near Henderson, human leg. And that's a pretty upsetting thing.
Yeah.
And a few days later, this story starts making the rounds that like 14 bodies had been pulled out of the Ohio River, and everybody's sharing it and going, whoa, and exactly the whoa. They literally were. And, I click on it and it's Empire News. I'm like, who's that? And I click on their about site and they claim that they're a satirical website. What was funny about that? It was a twist on the news, but there was no there. But it certainly got a lot of people to click, and they're still active. So the Johnny Depp being in town, I think that was actually called the Tri-State Beat.
Was that one? Yeah, the Beat.
The Beat.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. I was like,
There's literally a root vegetable as its icon. So I mean,
sorry, whoever's responsible for that, if you're listening. Please stop doing it. Or get funny.
Get funny.
That would be great.
Yeah, I'd love it. I'd love to have a local satirical site,
Yeah.
But
I think we're primed for like a local Daily Show type thing. There's enough goes on in Evansville.
Well, that Evansville's been on the Daily Show its fair share of times.
We're very good at making national press. Washington Post loves us lately. I don't know. Not sure why.
Yes, they do. So...
But yes, so Empire News, and that's one of those, like you said, you got to wait a minute, I've never heard of this, and why would they? And it's just
why are you writing about
who is
us?
This person? Yeah, because that's, I always, if you're on Facebook, which I think is a lot of the problem is Facebook, because all of the things, like you said, looks the same.
Yeah.
But you can still see that at the bottom it shows you what the domain name is. Well, look at the domain name. If it ends in .us, probably ignore it. Or something like that.
Yes.
.coms are to be trusted, .orgs maybe, but you can still fake that.
Yeah. So that kind of leads me into something else that what's going on. Stanford University did a pretty long long-term study. I think it was like a 15 to 16-month study where they studied 7,800 students from middle school through college. And this is what's upsetting me, and this is it really does have me worried. It's not just, oh my gosh, look how many people are so falling for this. What is the real impact of this? So in this study, they find that most students cannot determine the motivations or the differences between what news sources are. So, for example, 82% of middle schoolers couldn't distinguish between an ad labeled sponsored content and a real news story. So your Facebook has sponsored content and promoted content all the time. And 82% of middle schoolers surveyed in this long-term survey study could not tell that the ad, there was a motivation there. They're trying to sell you something. More than 2 out of 3 middle schoolers couldn't see any valid reason to mistrust a post written by a bank executive arguing that young adults need more financial planning help. You know, who's delivering this information? Quoting a bank executive in a story and then providing another objective source is another thing. Nearly 4 in 10 high school students believed, based on the headline, that a photo of deformed daisies on a photo sharing site, I think it was Imgur, or what is it, Imager, whatever. I'm not that hip, right? They could not tell that this deformed daisies on this site, they thought it provided strong evidence that there were toxic conditions near the Fukushima nuclear plant in Japan, even though there was no location or any other evidence. It was just, here's this, they believed it. So this is where we are. We're not teaching critical thinking, or in our attempts to, and I'm not going to blame teachers. It is not that. There are so many issues that are going on. But I'm just wondering, is there something in our standards, our educational standards, that needs to be addressed, that we make sure that we teach students that if something's labeled an ad, that's not the same as a piece of news content.
Right. Yeah.
Those are the questions I have.
Right.
And given also, the Pew Research Center, we look at 18 to 29-year-olds and where they got their information for the presidential race. 35% said social media and 18% said news website or app. Now you start going up in ages and you get to 30 to 49-year-olds, 50 to 64-year-olds, and their number one is cable news. Another problem we need to address.
That's all.
But I really, my passion is like, where can we start with the young'uns? Right. How can we start empowering them? I want them to be able to think for themselves. And as a college instructor, I'm seeing less ability to question what they're told. And more, they accept what I give them instead of, I would really like a little bit more pushback on, hey, well, why is that? Or, I'm looking for curiosity and I'm looking for questioning of evidence and asking where'd you get that information? What's your source? They never ask that.
Is this the case of like information overload, that there's just so much that we have available that just move on to the next thing?
News-wise, I think we're dealing with that. I think it becomes too complicated. And so it's easy to simplify it if you just can, especially if you're able to just put in you're responsible for what's in your own news feed. So when we're talking about actually being able to think critically and all of those things, I think there's just a lot of things competing for students' attention. I don't think we're focusing as much on language skills and communication skills. And there's a lot of emphasis on STEM, and STEM is great, but I want to know where the arts and the English are in that. Where is that? Some people have talked about making it STEAM, where English gets in there. As far as online and just being able to determine, if they're going through their social media feed, several years ago, it was a post about Syria. Someone in my life had posted a meme of Heath Ledger's Joker, and saying something. It said something about Assad is gassing his own people in Syria, and no one blinks an eye. But Ben Affleck is named the new Batman, and everybody loses their damn minds.
Right.
And in the comments under this, someone said, well, if Facebook had told us about Syria, we would be upset about it. And my head just lifted off of my shoulders. And I used this. I actually screenshotted it and I put it up in class. And what kind of upsets me is no one's really all that shocked. They don't see the problem. And my point is, Facebook doesn't tell you anything.
Yeah.
You are your own news editor. You are the person who decides what you are going to expose yourself to on Twitter and Facebook. So if you want to keep up with some news, you need to put some news organizations in your feed. And there need to be some, whatever you want to call it. You want to call it mainstream media? You want to call it legacy media? I heard Dana Perino, who is George W. Bush's former White House press secretary, refer to it as trusted news brands. Whatever you want to call it, they play a role. And again, I still believe that they are who are trying. They're at least giving the effort for objectivity.
Yeah. Okay.
I know. Soapbox?
Yeah. No. That's why I wanted to talk. Yeah. So, yeah. And that kind of, that is, I had a question, but that's basically the question about, because I was like recently, Trump meets Kanye. Everybody's talking about it, but we have Aleppo or the Flint water crisis, which I believe is still going on, but I haven't heard jack about that in months.
No.
So
what's going on?
What the heck?
Goes back to those what we want and what we need. And I don't think anybody actually wants this. That's my argument. And I would like to, at this point is where I'm going to start kind of distinguishing between, everybody uses the media as a collective. And I think a lot of times people use that and they are meaning cable news, which I've already kind of railed against, but cable news, I think, has been a big problem with this. If you're following the Washington Post and the New York Times and the Courier and Press, you're not going to see all politics all the time, all Trump all the time, all presidential election. You're going to see a lot more of the world. Yes, they are heavily pushing it, but it's still, you're going to get the other. During the presidential election, let's go back to the spring during the primaries. I was horrified for the other Republican candidates, that CNN would sit and say, we're awaiting Donald Trump to come speak to this big stadium in wherever city.
Sure.
And he'll be approaching there. And so we have a split screen of a blank stage with a bunch of people at a Trump rally and talking heads on the other side, while the world is burning. You know?
Oh, yeah.
We could spend that time, fine. And a question covering his rallies live, too, when you weren't seeing Ben Carson or Ted Cruz or, Jeb Bush rallies. Nobody's speeches got covered in their entirety, like Trump's. How? That's irresponsible. And so when you have decision-making like that going on for cable TV networks, no, it's not a surprise that Trump and Kanye are going to get more attention than what's going on in the fall of Aleppo. And it's wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the discussion is. Yeah, people are tuning in, but maybe they would tune in too if you would explain better what's going on. People probably don't quite understand. They've not been exposed enough to what's going on in Syria to really have to understand the details and the gravity of it. Although, human suffering, I would think just in itself connects.
Yeah. But it could be a case of it's not in America. So
and there is
less interest because of that.
And there's definitely always going to be
but
that,
then
right?
Flint is
right here. Yes.
It's in America.
But so was Katrina and the aftermath of Katrina, right? And so we saw, the recovery there, the discussions about and the coverage of the recovery there really became more reliant on the local press. And that's what happens. And I do understand that. And again, newsroom cutting down the newsrooms. One area that I still haven't figured out, and I just really don't have an answer for it. And I've looked, but I don't see a lot of people writing about it. I read a lot of journalistic journalism criticism sites and sites that talk about newsroom ethics. And yes, they exist. They're out there. And I think people would be really beneficial if maybe following Poynter Institute or Columbia Journalism Review, you're going to see people talking about these things in very elevated and very critical ways. So people ask me all the time, who watches the watchdogs? And I'm like, there are watchdog organizations out there for journalism.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. But one of the concepts or the pieces of news that I still can't quite figure out what happened during the election. Here we go. What's going on with the tribe up in the Dakotas and in the access pipeline, the Dakota Access Pipeline, and that there weren't any media on the ground there. And I still can't figure out after weeks and weeks and weeks why that still wasn't happening until it reached this point where everybody was real. And for the first time I was agreeing with, this is what the media is not telling you. And it wasn't that I felt like, I don't know. I don't buy the corporate interests of the media companies and all of that. I don't buy that. But I have not heard an adequate description. NPR eventually had someone up there. Associated Press was covering it, but every newspaper was running the Associated Press story. So we were seeing AP's story in all of these major publications.
Yeah.
That's not the same to me as covering it. Yeah, you're putting it in your newspaper, you've got it on your website, but every big news story. I really wanted to know what the truth was going on there. I don't know. I mean, I felt like both sides had a lot of different things that they were saying that were conflicting with each other, and the depictions of the interactions and telling me that this was a riot. And when you're hearing that maybe that wasn't I wanted an objective person on the ground telling me that. And so it was one that, boy, were we distracted by this election. But what else, how many people from each publication needed to be covering, both of the campaigns. I think we could have spared some people if it was a matter of people. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. And I'm still really, that's one I'm just so puzzled by, and I'm still waiting to hear somebody explain it to me. I'm sure several people will message me after they hear this and try to explain it to me.
Right. Well, if you figure something out, let me know.
Okay.
I don't know. We could talk about this for a while, I believe. One thing I did want to touch on, just because to find the story interesting, is the whole Pizzagate thing.
Yeah. And
this is my example of when fake news goes really bad. I mean, I guess depending on which side of the election you're on, that could be another example. But the Pizzagate, which if you're not familiar, check it. Just type in Pizzagate. I don't know why everything has to have gate on it. I don't like that.
It just keeps going.
But I guess that will never change.
Especially when it's something violent like this. I think that's what really disturbs me about this one, that it has gate after. It's not just like a break-in or, it's somebody shot a gun.
Yeah.
So
there was, but so this goes to the concept of, you're your own news editor, which is, I've heard of a lot of people say everyone's their own media company now. But I've never heard about news editor. That's very interesting. But people apparently will believe a lot of things. And there was a story about that came out of the WikiLeaks with the Hillary Clinton's emails that there's something in there about this place that was it, Comet Ping Pong, which is a pizza place in Washington, that they thought somebody figured out some secret code that it was a child pornography ring somehow. If you don't know the details, it is fascinating. But there's some dude drove up from North Carolina because he was on some Reddit boards and was convinced that this was happening and he was going to save the day, which on one level, admirable. But
vigilantism too.
I think he just said, whoa, and he took off. He did not wait.
He did not wait.
He did not say what. So he should watch your talk here. Hopefully that will help some people.
Yeah, maybe.
But this is not good. I mean, is this going to keep happening? Things like this?
Well, I think it is evidence that, bad information in the wrong hands, or so we can laugh off some of it, and then some of it we have to say
laugh off because I'm not involved at all, and
yes,
we live
but then
many
it
miles
risks,
away.
But then a gun's being fired in public and
where they have children birthday parties.
Yes, yeah,
not great.
Yeah, not good. Yeah. And so I think that we have seen this before. I mean, we have. I think history will tell you, and the crazy people, shooter people.
So that's the technical journalism
crazy
term.
Shooter people. They they'll get a hold of bad information. I mean, the guy who tried to assassinate President Reagan, had this obsession with Jodie Foster, and you have these, they get an idea in their head and it can't let go of them. The Unabomber had all of these conspiracies and just got really, just started writing his manifesto and then started acting on it. And so I don't think it's a new concept,
right?
But it is a different platform and it's at a different level.
Yeah.
And the rhetoric and the way it can spread, Reddit, and there's the other one that is the dark place. I can't remember what I wish I could remember the name of it.
It'll come to me.
Yes. Yeah. We don't need to promote it.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah. There's some pretty dark places out there.
Reddit can be like the best and the worst place on the internet.
Sure.
Simultaneously.
Yeah. I'm apparently old enough where I get stressed out by Reddit. So I just keep on. I can't even really follow I don't know how people follow information like that. So I need to be able to connect with people a little better, I guess, so I can get this message across. But what can happen as a result. And then we've got the cyberbullying and the way that people are talking to each other from the security of behind their keyboards. And it is concerning when they take it from behind the keyboards, get up and walk out their door with a weapon.
Right.
And it is worrisome. I do think that there is cause for concern that this isn't just harmless or that this is going to go away.
Right.
I don't know. Can we put it back in the box? I don't know that we can. And let me say this. I love the internet. I really love social media. It has improved my life in so many ways, and it can improve so many other people's lives too.
Yep.
But we also have to say, what do we need to be aware of, and how do we need to adjust what our education looks like, and how do we inform and police this within ourselves? And I say police this in a not in a risking our freedoms way, in our own personal lives with our kids and our friends, and I don't know. It's a tough call. Yeah. I mean, watching how people respond when I call them out and tell them that there's fake news.
Yeah.
It's still tough. I feel like a know-it-all. I feel like the know-it-all who's just like, here's the Snopes link. Do I have to do this again?
I feel like that's my lot in life sometimes is like, here's the Snopes link. So why this isn't? Yeah. Please check the site.
It feels a little snarky sometimes when I'm doing it.
But then it's like, I don't want this. But you have to do it because you don't want people just to keep thinking. No. It's like those, I don't know. It's like the emails I used to get from my grandma. With the 20 forwards in the front of it, and you're like,
yes,
why did you do this?
That's where all this really started with me. Actually, is the family, the family emails. I always call it the crazy uncle theory.
Yeah.
It's like, so is my crazy uncle right? And you can't trust the media,
right? And maybe you can't. But and the difference between media and journalism, there's a difference, right?
There is. I mean, media companies, that's the blanket, that's the umbrella that journalism falls under. And again, I'm going to say television has the advent of cable news really has played a role in confusing that. For example, this isn't even a cable news rant. This is a morning network news, and I'm using air quotes right now, programs. So the Today Show is mind-boggling to me. So many people begin their day with that. And I can't tune in for 3 minutes without being furious. The news anchor gives some news and then comes over to the couch and they joke around and they kind of give pithy responses, and kind of showing opinions or praising red carpet dresses or whatever. Right. That is media to me. That is entertainment. And there is a term, infotainment, and that falls in that category. We're being entertained by the news, I guess. And again, the question mark, what is the news? Right. So how much time, and I'm sure there are studies out there, I haven't looked for them, but how much time do morning TV programs on the network spend on giving the world news, the national news, how many minutes of that based on, and then we turn around and we're interviewing, I don't know, Ben Affleck, or he's come up twice now. I don't know. I really
do you feel a little obsession with Ben Affleck?
I'm actually a Matt Damon girl. So.
Okay. Fair enough.
I am human.
Funny.
Wow. So
breaking news.
Yes.
Matt Damon.
None of this is a surprise to John, my husband. So
we'll put some in the link about you and Matt Damon. And
okay.
But they'll have to listen to find out what.
Yes. So yeah, I don't know how we got from the frightening stuff. I think I am a little disturbed by how frightening that kind of what can happen. It is, and it's to the point where I don't have answers. And my response is educate. And somehow I'm trying to take this message and connect with people without sounding like I'm coming from inside a bubble, or I work at a university, which already we
just
have this
part of the liberal elite media.
That's the worry. This is the worry that this is or that you're a part of the academic. You're up in your ivory tower.
Right.
So I've got a couple things working against me here.
Yeah. No, it's USI. We have no ivory towers.
Terrorists. We're working with a working class group of students, and we're very much plugged into this community, and we're trying to educate the workforce in this community, and exactly. We're trying to also create thinkers.
Right.
So,
it's UE that has the ivory tower. That's what you're saying. No, I don't want to.
I have friends there. I have friends there. But yeah, I don't know. What do we do? How do I connect? I'm looking for, if anybody hears this and is a teacher in local school system, I would love if this is connecting with you. I want to connect with you. I would like to talk to you. Can we do something where we, I have access to maybe some lesson plans that we could start working on and trying to incorporate into a course. Maybe you could do a unit on news literacy, and I would love to be a part of that and help with that.
Is it on the iStep? Because if it's not, then I don't think they can teach that.
I know. It's concerning.
Yeah.
Well, they're rebuilding it.
Yes, sure, they are rebuilding.
Maybe I should have worked. Well, they're starting over, so maybe there's still time.
There is time.
So
let's get that in there.
Yeah.
So have you ever thought about just going to the dark side and starting your own fake news site and making a bunch of cash?
No. Yeah. Okay. I think all the time about, what is it we need in, is there something I can contribute? I'm not sure another news site is what we need, though. I think I'm all for supporting, our local, our local media. I'm an advisor to a student newspaper where we're still trying to convince people. I mean, we have students who would, my students did a election guide a couple weeks before the election, and it was a how-to. It didn't talk about the candidate. It listed the candidates that were going to be on their ballot, trying to educate people that there was going to be like 23-something candidates on their ballot, and, we're going to only recognize the 3 at the top. Right. And to make sure that they understood we're voting for governor and it's a county election. And so they were handing it out, hand to hand. And they had people say, no, thank you. When they were saying, hey, would you like an election guide? It literally was saying, how do you do an absentee ballot? And how do you, how can you, where can you vote here? And all of those things. And even when they say, well, it's more than that. And they're like, I've already made up my mind who I'm voting for. And that's what we're fighting. Yeah. So I'm, I think I can be a good ambassador for local publications, good news, good journalism, trying to tell people, it's not about finding a new place to get your information. It's out there. And it's not really about who's delivering the news to you. That's part of evaluating news and whether it's good. but it comes down to you evaluating it, period. What is wrong? What could possibly be wrong with this story? Who are the sources? What evidence and authority do those sources have? That's what I'm trying to get everybody to understand is, let's stop judging who's delivering the news to us and trying to, make everybody at fault for this. And let's just start judging the information that's being given to us and evaluating it one little bit at a time to educate ourselves so that we're better news consumers and smarter voters.
Well, if you change your mind, crazyunclenews.com and .us are available.
Okay. So, I now know what my backup plan is.
So, yeah.
I love it.
I mean, maybe you should do that anyways. But.
Yeah, right. Hey, maybe we could trick people into actually reading good information.
You forward it to the Washington Post or the Courier or something.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait.
That's right.
What is going on here?
Yeah. Promote it on Facebook and then maybe it'll get caught up in the new filters.
Maybe. Yeah.
I do have one comment about that. And thank you, Facebook. This is a good start, but you're really late to the party.
Well, reactionary is always better than proactive.
Yeah. So, but I do, it was, I think all along, that little drop down where you can report something as spam.
Yeah.
That's exactly where that fake news needed to be all along.
Right.
You needed to be able to do a drop down and report it as fake news. And that was easy. I mean, they do so many other clever little things. So,
they change your timeline on you. Drop of the hat.
Yes.
They don't care what you think about that.
I appreciate that they're working on it. And I don't mean to be too glib about that, but it really would have helped if they started earlier.
Yeah. And that just came out this morning. So I'm not sure how effective it's going to be.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah,
they are partnering with some really good organizations. So they are partnering with the news watchers out there, the watchdog type people, fact checking type sites. And so I'm encouraged by that they decided not to totally do it on their own. I think that shows some real leadership in that we're not going to just trust who you in your organization is going to judge this.
Right.
I mean, their little recommended news or trending news on the side has been very problematic. So I would not have trusted Facebook to make the decision whether or not something was fake news based on what they're doing on their trending side, because that has been part of the problem too.
Right.
So I was happy to see that they had some good partners in it and people that organizations that I trust and I think will do a good job. So we'll see how it works.
We'll see. Okay. Well, thank you for coming over. I know we could talk about this for a while, and probably will talk about it again. And but feel free anytime to stop by, and definitely when the documentary is close to.
I will. I look forward to being able to talk about elephants instead of this.
Yes,
it'll be a nice little reprieve.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Erin. Appreciate
Thank you.
It. Thanks again to Erin Gibson for coming on and talking fake news with us. We also want to thank our sponsor, 6th Street Soapery. Still some time left before Christmas to get some last-minute gifts, and I would highly recommend 6th Street Soapery. And also, thanks to Art the Dude for allowing us to play some music there at the beginning. And, as always, good job, everybody.